Welcome, everybody. Hello, team. As I promised, here we're going to start our journey through the Italian wine. Of course, the goal of all of those classes is to make you more confident about Italian wine. It's very difficult also to know all the grapes, all the different landscape that characterize Italy. But of course, we are going to try, especially focusing our attention to the most important appellation, and also regarding the wines that we are already having in our wine menu, in our wine list, and possible newcomers in the following weeks. So, with any more talking, I want to start focusing the attention on Piemonte, Piedmont. Basically, according to me, but not only me, this is the most important region regarding like a wine in Italy, especially for two appellation that are officially recognized all over the world, Barolo and Barbaresco. But why, Piemonte is so special? It's so special for many characteristics, of course, because there is, as I already anticipated about Italy, there is a protection coming from the Alps, who are actually, cover and surrounding like the border between Italy, France, in Italy and Switzerland. And also, this one basically prevent the cold winds coming from Europe to come to Italy and possibly even frost in the grapes, especially during spring. But then we have to also to realize that like years, centuries, millennium, thousands of centuries ago, Italy was covered by the sea, and especially even in Piedmont. And progressively, this sea retired, leaving a lot of like sediment and fossils and shells. And there are, especially in Piemonte, there is a big presence of calcareous marl and sandstone with a percentage that actually can vary according to the different location. The climate is mostly continental, with a very alpine influence, especially in the area here, very close with the northernmost part of Piedmont. And here, we have a very deep continental climate. The more we go south, the more we have a little bit of influence, maritime influence, Mediterranean influence coming from Liguria. Here, the main varietals of Piemonte, of course, there are three, especially when people go dine. In general, they start with the Dolcetto as a quaffable kind of a wine with very food friendly, with a little bit of bitter finish, tannic with medium plus acidity. They usually combine this wine for a nice appetizer in Piedmont. Then they continue with the Barbera. Barbera can be made in two ways. One with stainless steel, so with no oak influence. That is a kind of a pizza wine, or they can use the oak. When Barbera have the influence of oak, is a wine, is a grape that is able to give a wine with more ability, much more ability to age, much more complexity. In general, Barbera is a red fruits, cherry leading, with medium plus acidity. So remember, Barbera has a very acidic grape with low tannins. So when Barbera is aged in oak, the tannins are released by the oak. So they're gonna get like a little bit more tannic component, and of course, more structure and body. And then a Nebbiolo. Nebbiolo is the signature grape, not only in Piemonte, but is the possibly the most important grape that we have in Italy. Is a thin skin grape. It produces wine with medium plus tannins, medium plus acidity, usually with a flavor profile that goes much more into the dry flowers, dried fruits, dried flowers, in particular violet and roses, with a lot of spices also, like sweet spices like cinnamon, nutmeg, a little bit of tobacco, sometimes even a little bit of chocolate. It also depends on the way this wine is aged in new oak or used oak. That will, can really change the flavor profile of this wine. But of course, in Piemonte, they always like to finish their meal, to have their mains. I mean, with Nebbiolo, it could be Nebbiolo d'Alba or Barolo or Barbaresco. Um, those are the three main appellation where this grape is used, and the pairing with this wine is they really it's very complex earthy wine that can be paired very easily with all kind of truffle, mushrooms, um, very and also with game, due to the structure of this wine. So it's very remarkable. For example, when we have beef cheeks in our menu, this is one of the best pairing that we can offer. Okay, both with the Nebbiolo and with Barolo. Of course, Barolo will be better. Nebbiolo instead could be very good when we have this tagliarina with this kind of like little tagliatelle egg pasta with the truffle as well. The Nebbiolo could be an excellent choice. There are many other indigenous grape in Piemonte. The most famous is basically Grignolino and Freisa. Grignolino is a very interesting grape. I love Grignolino so much. It could be our beautiful version of a Beaujolais. It's a kind of like a nice tanning, medium plus wine with a very bright acidity. He also behaves like with the flavor profile, almost like a rosé with is an acidity of a white, the flavor kind of like the of a rosé, and the tannins of a red. It's a very interesting grape. Maybe we're gonna have it, especially when it comes to summertime. Having a Grignolino could be a very good choice. It combines very well with all kind of appetizers. And also Freisa is another good grape. Like in general, all of those grapes, remember, are kind of like a red fruits, kind of a grape. So if you have to describe the wine, Cabernet, dark grape, Nebbiolo, Barbera, is more likely like red, Grignolino, red. Dolcetto instead can lean towards more like a dark fruit. Other grapes, also when it comes to white, I would say Moscato for Moscato d'Asti, Cortese, Arneisa are the most famous. We have an Arneisa in our menu. Beautiful wine with dry white flowers as a component, with medium acidity, good amount of alcohol. It pairs very well with all kind of fish. And the Cortese instead is a little bit less body. It's a little bit more quaffable with a lower percentage of alcohol. Those are wine that combine very well, even especially the Cortese, with all kind of charcuterie. It's possible that we are going to have a Cortese soon in our menu. We already have the Arneis. Please don't be shy to recommend an Arneis. Arneis, it's a very elegant grape. It's a beautiful, beautiful wine that can be combined, as I said, with beautiful with our branzino, but also with our grilled calamari, with our fish tartare. Very, very nice grape. Um, DOCG and DOC. As I mentioned before, our highest level of classification are DOC and DOCG. DOCG is even higher than DOC. And of course, Piemonte is the region who has the majority of DOCG in Italy. I count from since I believe 18, more than Tuscany, more than Veneto. So this is actually a good representation of on how Piemonte is how much Piemonte is important. And the most prestigious, of course, are Barolo and Barbaresco, but also Gattinara, Gemme are very important. And those are Barolo and Barbaresco are located along the Tanaro River. We will see soon where the Tanaro River flows, and those are appellations surrounded by a larger kind of appellation, a DOC, that is the Languedoc. So the Langue is this big area. Within the Langue, there are two smaller appellation, Barolo and Barbaresco, where actually Nebbiolo can grow and give its best results. Don't forget that when it comes to the way we classify, the old world classify the wine, we classify the grapes based on the terroir. So Barolo, remember, is 100% Nebbiolo. But Barolo is an appellation, a geographical area with 11 villages where actually Nebbiolo find its best location. The same thing as Barbaresco, only three villages, but like even there, it's a geographical area. Here we go. Now let's focus our attention on Barolo. As you can see, the one in gray here is the Langhe area. And within the Langhe area, there are the Barolo appellation. Barolo may be produced in 11 villages, communes. La Morra, Barolo, Serralunga d'Alba, Monforte d'Alba, Castiglione Falletto are the most important, which is also important Verduno, just to mention a few, Grinzane Cavour. The soils basically it's very important when it comes to Barolo because based on the characteristic of the soils, we can have different wine. So when calcareous Mars are dominant we have wine that are a little bit more delicate. And this characteristic is especially important here in around the village of La Morra and Barolo. Instead, when we have more sandstone in the soil, we are going to have Barolo which are more prone to age longer. So here in Monforte d'Alba and Serralunga, we have more sandstone. So when we are talking about a Barolo coming from those areas, we are talking about Barolo that are able to age longer and they are a little bit more structured than the other one from La Mora. Barolo, just to give you a little bit, you don't have to know all of this information, but Barolo must be aged at least 38 months. But only 18 needs to be on oak. And the oak can be very different. Could be new oak or versus used oak, Botte Grande. And of course, when they use Botti, you have a Barolo that is a little bit more oxidative in terms of flavor, a more traditional kind of Barolo. With the new oak instead, you have a little bit more power, a little bit more fresh fruits. It tends to lean a little bit more towards the fruit section, the Barolo. The tannins are a little bit riper. In general, those wines are more ready to drink earlier at the early stage. Barolo Reserve instead requires a total of 62 months, prior to release. So, but in general, generally speaking, when it comes to Barolo is a wine that can be really enjoyed even after 10, 15, certain wines 20, 40, 50. I had Barolo Borgogno in from 1958, and to be honest, it was such a remarkable bottle of wine. Here we go. When it comes instead to Barbaresco, Barbaresco, if we have to compare, if they have to describe the difference, I will say that in general, generally speaking, Barolo is a little bit more muscular, more power. Barbaresco instead is a little bit more delicate in flavor, but still with medium plus acidity and medium plus tannins. Here, as you can see, Barbaresco is here in around this lane. There is the Tanaro River. Here there is Barolo, and here a little bit more east there is Barbaresco appellation. Slightly lighter in body, as I said. This Barbaresco appellation is concentrated in three towns: Barbaresco, Neve, and Treviso. The wines instead has a little bit shorter period of aging in oak. We have like a minimum of 2 years, including at least 9 months in cask, or for a minimum of 4 years if labeled Reserva. Reserva, in general, are wine that is supposed to be aged longer. And when it comes to producer, just want to mention few big producer also for you to enjoy and to look into the best producer that are available. Bartolo Mascarello is an institution, is in the village of Barolo, is a more like a traditional style of Barolo. Actually, years and years ago, he made this famous label about where it was written "No Barrique, no Berlusconi." Berlusconi was our prime minister in Italy, involved in many scandals, and just to manifest his personal uh, opinion against Oak, and against, of course, our political leader at that time. Cavallotto, based in Castiglione Falletto, still a traditional producer, a nice example of very a lot of finesse and ability to age as well. Paolo Scavino was a little bit more modern in terms of produce, as long as Elio Altare with his Barolo Arborina. Very, very important example of um, a modern producer with a little bit more use of oak. But remember, the use of oak in those producers are never too much bold. Like we are talking about wine still characterized by a lot of finesse. And then we have, of course, a Gaia. We have a Gaia, like a very, very important producer as well. Here, instead with the Barbaresco, Produttori del Barbaresco, actually, I will recommend you to try this producer. Is always, in general, available also at the LCBO. The price is still like a very good quality and price. You can find it at the LCBO. This is a co-op, maybe the best co-op that you can find in Italy, still producing like highest example of Barbaresco, as long as like a Bruno Giacosa. But of course, the wines from Bruno Giacosa are super, super expensive, like maybe one of the best producer, maybe the best producer of Barbaresco, with wines that are able to age forever, a traditional producer. Ceretto, another great producer, and also Barbaresco Roncaglio from Podericolla, that sometimes is a seasonal product, but you can find at the LCBO as well. Other DOCG, I'm not gonna stay, so I'm not gonna spend too much time over the other uh, appellation in Piemonte. Gattinara and Gemme, very important, Nebbiolo based, but in that appellation in general, Nebbiolo grape is blended with Vespolina, Bonarda, and other grapes, just to tame the tannins of the Nebbiolo. Other important appellation, like, sorry, Gattinara and Gemme, are a little bit more north from Langhe. Instead, the more we go east, the more we go with Barbera taking a lead. And in the Monferrato Hills is on the east of the Langhe, and in this case we have a best expression of Barbera, which can be pizza, kind of a pizza wine, as I said, when is unoaked. When is oaked, instead, is a wine with a lot of complexity. And then Dolcetto di Dogliani. We are not planning to have any Dolcetto in our wine list, but it's also good to know if you are planning a trip to Langhe to know what grape are actually very good to drink. Gavi, as I said, very quaffable. People in general really like light wines. With a light structure, medium plus acidity. Good wines are also able just to be as good as an aperitif by itself. Moscato d'Asti, in general, we are going to have like a sweet wines, kind of a grapey kind of a flavor. Very good with kind of a fruit salad, just to give an example, light with a little bit of like a fizzy and sparkle. When it comes to Barchetto, instead, we are going to have a sweet wine with more red. Sorry, guys, with more of red fruits. And those wine are very good, especially just to give an example, I will pair Barchetto if I have a chance with a nice panna cotta with the strawberries on top, because the strawberry flavor of the syrup matches very well with the strawberry flavor of the panna cotta and of the barchetto. Here we go. Like now, let's move to Lombardy. Lombardy, I actually wanna to pay my attention to three wines in particular. Lombardy doesn't have an extensive array of indigenous varieties, also because in the beginning of the last century it was hit by phylloxera, and then when they replanted, they focused their attention mostly on productivity, planting Croatina and Barbera most likely. But in the recent years, Lombardy was able to turn its production more into quality. Still, here we have a beautiful uh, picture of the Lake of Como, where actually I'm from. There is Alps, pre-Alps, the Apennines foothills at the end, but like most likely, like we have the Alps that protected the northern part of the region from cold winds. But and then we have this is the region where you can find the most important and the biggest lakes in Italy, and the lakes actually play a big role. Tempering and moderating the temperature of Lombardy. This is why in certain areas of Lake Garda, you can even find olives, and you can even find like a more Mediterranean climate. Grape varieties Lombardy. As white, we have Turbiana, very important. We are going to find in one appellation, Trebbiano di Lugana or Lugana. Turbiana is genetically very close to Verdicchio. Verdicchio, I don't know if you remember, but is a grape that is very important in Italy, especially in Marche, able to give a wine with a bright acidity, green kind of a flavor, and also with an almond finish. Very good with uh, um, fish, but also, Turbiana can be aged in oak and can be wine, can give a wine with much more structure and complexity. As a grape, red grape, we have a Caratina, especially in the south of Lombardy, that is considered a native variety of Lombardy. And then we have Barbera. Barbera is the kind of a table wine in Lombardy, especially in Oltrepò Pavese. While in the north, this is actually very, very important because in the north we have a prevalence of Nebbiolo grape. Nebbiolo grape, which actually is possible that comes from Lombardy and not from Piedmont, and find its best, especially in Valtellina. Valtellina, the Nebbiolo from Valtellina compared to the Nebbiolo coming from Langhe, I mean Barolo and Barbaresco, are more something in between, more close in a lighter profile, and you can have like a wine. They're very bright. That most of the time can remind you a little bit more a Pinot Noir from Burgundy than a regular Nebbiolo from Langhe. Here we go. Like we have a regional appellation, Valtellina, very important. Franciacorta, mostly important, especially sparkling. And then I'm going to focus my attention especially on Lugana with Garda, Lombardo, and Lower Lombardia, Oltrepò. Just want to show you here a little bit more Valtellina. Valtellina, as I said, is a high altitude alpine climate in the north of Lombardy. Vineyards are terraced. They, as you can see in this picture, I hope you can see properly, the vineyards are terraced, also to contain the erosion. Is a small parcel of vineyards where Nebbiolo find its best. And we are gonna find like a very crunchy kind of expression of Nebbiolo, very super complex, but very, very also easy to drink with bright acidity, and the tannins are not as harsh as sometimes you can find in appellation like Barolo and Barbaresco. I highly recommend if you have a chance to try those wines. Those wines are fantastic, simply fantastic, and possibly we are going to have soon a version of Valtellina Superiore. So don't forget to recommend this wine for people who are Nebbiolo lovers because they're going to love it. They're going to love it. They're going to find something new for you. Remember, people who are very extravagant and they like to try new wines. This could be a very good suggestion. Franciacorta, instead, we are going to turn into the white production, especially sparkling. In the last years, Franciacorta became the most important, the most recognized appellation for sparkling wines, and it was elevated in DOCG in 1995. That we have a prevalence of Chardonnay, but also Pinot Blanc and Pinot Noir can be used in the blend, of course, but we have in general a majority of Chardonnay. What characterizes the Franciacorta, just to give an example, compared to a champagne? So we have the same style of production. So if you want to review the how champagne is made, please check the video on the Gilsom. And yes, the Franciacorta is the same. So the second fermentation happens in a bottle. And then you're gonna have like Franciacorta is a little bit different because the aging requirements are higher. So we are gonna have wines that age longer on its lees. Please remember, if you forgot how champagne is made, we have at least 18 months for a non-vintage. Don't forget that, like in general, champagne requires only 12 months in on lease for a total of no longer than 15 months for a regular non-vintage champagne. So longest minimum lease aging requirements in the world for a non-vintage. We have a vintage, 30 months on lease instead. A vintage is when the mm, date of the harvest which characterize the product is mentioned, and also the reserve instead 60 months on the lease. It's very remarkable. So you're gonna have a kind of like a champagne style of a wine method champenoise with a lot of complexity, with in generally speaking, with a little bit more body compared to a champagne, a regular champagne, also due to the climate, which is still continental, but with the influence played by the lake, which moderating like the temperature in this area. Products that are very famous when it comes to Franciacorta. We have here the Cuvée Bellavista, famous producer, very remarkable. We have a Cuvée Anna Maria Clementi from Ca del Bosco. We have a Barone Pizzini, very important because it was the first who turned his production into completely organic production. When it comes to Lugana, instead, we have a Marangona, Lugana Marangona, very, very beautiful wine that possibly we are going to have in our wine list soon. And then I just mentioned Sandro Fei for Valtellina. Oltrepò Pavese is another region that gain a lot of attention, especially for very good quality sparkling wine. But instead of Franciacorta, the majority of their production is based on Pinot Noir. Pinot Noir instead of a Chardonnay. Chardonnay characterized the production of Franciacorta. Also, the Alta Pavese is famous for other wines. It's based on Croatina and Barbera, most likely. We are going to have soon one of those wines. Is a Buttafuoco. Is a fantastic wine, very complex, that I highly recommend for people who are more like a wine connoisseur. This wine is very complex. I will pair this one with a risotto with the mushroom, a fantastic pairing, but also with the brasato, with the braised beef cheeks, or even with the pollo alla cacciatora. Lugana Dock. Here we are getting very close. It's the Lugana appellation. It's here between Lombardy and Veneto, where actually, not far from the Valpolicella and the Bardolino appellation. And this appellation is on the south side of the Lake Garda. So we have a lot of influence played by the lake, moderating the temperature. And the soils in general are calcareous clays, with glacial moraine. So, as I mentioned before, the most important grape is the Torbiana, which is genetically related to Verdicchio. You're going to have a wine with a bright acidity in this case, very good with all kind of fish, but also able to be enjoyable, especially with the pizza. Don't forget that in Italy, pizza is paired with white wines instead of a red. So, and I would highly recommend you to enjoy yourself pairing a pizza, even a margherita, with a white wine. You will see is a much better pairing than a red. And I'm touching like this class. We are gonna touch most likely uh, um, the style, especially. Sorry, just wanna review with you here, going down, going back to Piemonte on the south, we are going to have instead Liguria. Liguria is a kind of a transition region where between the north and the south, because we are going to have grapes like Dolcetto, locally called Ormeasco. We are going to have like a Vermentino, which is also a grape which is highly cultivated in Tuscany. And we are going to start having, especially on the eastern side, a lot of Sangiovese. So this is why I called Liguria as a region in between Piemonte and Tuscany, also because uh, as you can see, you can find, grapes that are mostly cultivated in Piedmont being cultivated in Liguria, and also, famous grapes, Tuscan grapes, that are cultivated with a lot of success in Liguria as well. Location, as you can see, in Liguria here you can find the Mar Ligure, the Mediterranean. So the climate is much more with the Mediterranean influence, and it's very mountainous area. So the more we go higher in altitude, the better, you're gonna have like a vineyards with a lot of more thermal amplitude, a lot of temperature excursion, and this is actually beneficial, especially for the vineyards. I don't want to go too much longer, but I just want to mention that we are going to have possibly a nice Vermentino from Liguria. We already have a wine one from Sardinia, don't forget. In that Vermentino from Liguria is very, very an amazing wine with a good body, with a good minerality, very complex. In general, people, generally speaking, are having this wine with Branzino, Alsale, with Sibas, as I said, as a Sebrim. This is very good. But also, Vermentino can be also be paired with shrimp. So if people are looking for a pairing for our shrimp pasta, I will highly recommend our Vermentino from Sardinia, but in case we have also one from Liguria, I will recommend the Vermentino grape, and also with clams as well. Uh, Red grape, don't forget, we have a Sangiovese, very important grape in Liguria, and also Rossese. We're not going to have this grape, so we are not touch so much. In 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 Liguria, it's viticulture is something very dramatic because you're going to have all of those, as you can see, all of those vineyards in a very high steep hills. So this is also define a heroic viticulture because most of the time people, in order to pick up the grapes, they have to climb and they have to even put wear bags, hang themselves on this cord just to pick their grapes. So viticulture is something fantastic, and it's very actually majestic, even the landscape. And don't forget, like when the sea is so close to the vineyards, is able also to give a lot of influence. So a lot of seaside actually stays on the berries, and you're gonna have a wine with a lot of mineral component and minerality. So here we go. As I mentioned before, we are just to give you an idea, we are gonna focus more into Riviera di Levante appellation, Colli di Luna in particular, where Vermentino and Sangiovese are the most important grape. Don't forget this appellation. We're not gonna have something soon regarding those wines. They also produce a beautiful dessert wine, Cinque Terre Chaquetra. We are not going to have it because it's the production is actually very low. And Riviera di Ponente, where you will see we are going to have a Pigato and Vermentino, they actually genetically are identical. So Vermentino most likely, and in the other, so leaning more west on the west of Liguria, the Vermentino find one of its best expression. So this is the end of our the first half of the northern Italian wine. I had to divide in order to make it a little bit more achievable for you and not too much longer because we still have to touch the east part of the northern Italian wine, which is Veneto and Friuli, Venezia Giulia, and Trentino Alto Adige. Very important, and I hope you enjoy, and I hope you are able to be stronger when it comes to wine, the Italian wine, and you are able to better describe those wines to our guests. So have a good day, team, and see you soon. Thank you.